Okay. Hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it normally runs for about 3 hours. So if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. So, let's see, what was I going to tell you? Real quick, Angie and I weren't able to do our live stream yesterday. She had a sick kid. So, we were going to do it tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, we will be going live then. Let's see, anything else? Book club. Book club discussion is going to be October 24th at, I believe, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The book we are going to be discussing is called Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. Really interesting book. I am curious to hear everybody's thoughts about it. So, and let's see. My computer is doing weird things. Oh, of course it is. I can't see if anybody, I can't see a chat. Well, this is how live technology goes. Let's see here if we can do something about this. I'm going to try refreshing my screen. And I still see no chat. Oh boy. Okay, I guess we'll just give it a few minutes and see what on earth, why it is doing this. And hopefully it'll just kind of adjust itself here. I'm going to close out some other windows and see if that shouldn't be the issue. This is just really strange. I'm going to try this again. Hang tight. I think I might have had two Zooms open. So maybe that was the issue. I don't know. It's taken a while. Oh, computer. This is so strange. Okay, it's telling me I'm live on YouTube, but it's doing weird things. So, oh, yeah. Hang tight, everybody. I'm going to try this again. And then if not, I'll exit out of Zoom and then come back. So if that is the case, then please just refresh your browser and hopefully it'll take you to the correct live stream. Why is this doing this? Zoom, what are you doing? Okay, I'm going to exit out. I will be back in about 3 minutes. Sit tight. Fingers crossed. Oh, I wish you could. Okay, I'm still seeing the same thing. This is so frustrating. I don't know what to tell you. I'm just gonna, maybe I can pull this up on my phone. I can't see the chat. There's nothing here. It's just the video screen and that's it. So I apologize, you guys. I don't know what is going on. Uh, so I guess I'm hoping you guys can see the chat and can see each other and can talk. Oh, okay. I'm on my, yeah, I can see the chat on my phone. I don't know. It's like it's really slow to load. Well, we'll just see how well how well this works. Yeah. And hopefully Zoom will load. Oh, this is wild. Okay, good. I'm not the only one. Life is a Journey says, I can see it on my phone, but not on my computer. Okay. James says she needs an IT guy. I do. Elizabeth says, is this the live stream? Yes, it's chaos. Welcome. Welcome, Elizabeth. This is what we also like to call Dana versus technology. This is a weekly show where I wrestle around with technology and find all different kinds of ways to mess things up. So welcome. Let's see here. I'm just gonna, oh, okay, good. Kevin was saying, yeah, YouTube just changed something like an hour ago. Okay, good. I'm glad it's not me, because boy, I tell you, sometimes I feel like I'm a walking magnet where I just, anything electrical just, I feel like goes on the fritz around me. It's really frustrating. Oh, good. Okay. Life is a Journey says, yeah, it's a relief because I thought there was something wrong with my computer. Yeah. Well, I guess it's not, it's a YouTube thing. So I don't know. I guess I'll just repeat everything I was saying. For those of you that are just hopping on, my name is Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try to do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It normally runs for about 3 hours. Uh, so if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. So we've got some glitchy stuff going on tonight. So just sit tight. We'll do the best we can. And let's see, what else was I going to tell you? Oh, Angie and I were not able to go live yesterday due to she had a sick child. So we're going to go live tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope you guys can join us for that. And thanks, James. He says troll handled. I didn't even see it. So okay, let's see. Cha-cha-cha. Let me scroll down. Kamami bonsoir says, I'm really tired. It is now 2:42 in the AM here in France. I am a French lady. James says, a YouTube show, Dana versus technology, would be a great series. Oh my God, it would just be me screaming at technology. It would be the same episode over and over again, just different forms of technology. It would be me screaming and crying and throwing things. Not that I throw things, but in my fantasy way of handling things, I do. So yes, I know, Jack. I was going to. He says no pressure, but I thought I was gonna have the blue wrench coming in. LOL. Yes, I totally wanted to. What would you say? Knight you, christen you, bestow the blue wrench upon you because I can't believe I haven't. I guess, you know what I guess it is I guess I was looking at the blue in your logo, in your little icon thing, and I don't know, my brain, I think it just connected those 2, and I just thought that you had a blue wrench, but my goodness, if anybody deserves one, it's hands down you. So if you're up for the job and it's, no pressure, you just do what you can kind of a thing, um, I would happily give you, uh, give you the blue wrench because you have just been so wonderful around here. Uh, Claza says, one of my friends is an IT expert and regularly shouts at computers. Yes, I can't imagine. A job like that would be absolutely, and I just, that my stress level, my blood pressure would be through the roof all day long. Just no way. No way I could do that. Let's see. Little Miss Charmmaker says, I've been out of my toxic situation for 3 months now. It's only temporary because I got a job babysitting across the state. I will have to go back in mid to late November, but it's been great to be away. Well, I'm glad you were able to get a 3-month break there. And that was another thing I was going to do that I didn't remember, so I'm going to write it down now, is the Cambly thing. A lot of people have asked me about this, and it's teaching English. It's basically being a conversation partner for people that want to learn English or want to practice their English. And it can really be a lot of fun if you like people. So, and if you are a native English speaker. Um, so it's, you set your own hours. It's great work at home kind of a thing. You don't need a formal degree to do it. Um, you know, it's a great option, and I will have more on that here posted by this weekend. So I'm making a note to myself, and I need to posting it right there. So I will get on that, and I will put a link. I will see about putting a link in my descriptions of where to go for Cambly info and kind of, reading more about it and what all it entails and such. And I should probably go grab my phone charger. Where am I? 31%. Okay. Ay, ay, ay. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Oh, people are asking, Dana, how are you feeling? Any better? I am slowly on the mend. I think I still sound worse than I feel. My energy is back. Feeling significantly better. I got my first good night's sleep last night in about a month. So minimal coughing, because with this cold that's going around, I don't know about anybody else, but I wake up just in these coughing fits, and you get to the point where you're just so tired because you're not sleeping because you're coughing all night that you just want to cry. But let's see. Claza says, Dana, I've promised to volunteer to help homeless people one night a fortnight. I am nervous. Is there anything in particular about that is making you nervous? I've always found that, like Agatha once said, she just summed this up perfectly. Basically, like if you can put a face on the monster, it makes it easier to slay. And I think that's just a great way to say it. If you can define the fear, it makes it easier to address. And so that way you can kind of anticipate, well, what is it? Is it being around, is it just starting something new? Is it about being around a bunch of new people? Is it about, having to kind of potentially interact with new people? Is it the location? Is it the time of day? What in particular about that's making you nervous? So if you can kind of define that, then you can work backwards and figure out, okay, if it's the volunteer position, then maybe the solution is to collect more information about what what all of that entails. And or maybe if it's working with um, homeless people and you've never worked with homeless people before, then asking the volunteer coordinator, okay, can you give me, I'm really nervous about this, and can you give me some pointers on maybe what to say or what not to say, or whatever it might be that you're nervous about. If you're cooking meals, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're nervous about your cooking or cooking for that many people. So it's just getting specific, but I will tell you the vast majority of the time, volunteers are always warmly welcomed wherever they go, and people are just thrilled to have you. So as long as you're willing to give a helping hand, outside of setting the building on fire, like, they overlook a lot. So really don't. I would encourage you to, I guess, just realize that it's always awkward doing something for the first time, but my guess is I would guess that you'll probably find it really enjoyable and, a great way to connect to other people. Let's see. Oh, James asks, "Hey, this is random. There was a live stream a few weeks ago where your voice sounded lower. Did you figure out why?" Do you mean like robotically lower? Because there was that one live stream that I guess I sounded terrifying, and I think that had to do with the microphone setting. So I now have a checklist that I have been using. Well, actually, really, tonight is the first night I've used this checklist. And of course, now we've got technology issues with YouTube, and which was frustrating. But the checklist is designed to help make sure that these things within my control are controlled. Let's see here. 333 Lightworker says, when I've asserted myself in response to blatant disrespect, rudeness, and slippery forms of abuse as of late by mostly men in Michigan, I've been met with them being defensive, calling me an abuser. Just stunning behavior. Yeah. Well, I think, there's different people with abusive behavior have different levels of awareness of their behavior. And so I really do think a lot of them truly don't understand. Like, in their mind, they just feel it's just a sign of immaturity. Like, they just feel really entitled. That's how they feel. They're like, hey, I'm just calling it as it is. I'm just being honest. I'm just telling the truth. I'm just this or that. And so, not, I mean, and then they come across as really brash, and they feel entitled to that, but they don't, I guess they just don't care that how inappropriate that is. And so when somebody calls them on it, they're really taken aback, especially if a person gets upset. It's like, "Hey, what do you do? Like, that's ridiculous, or that's rude, or that's way over the top or uncalled for." They're taken aback because they feel so justified in what they're saying that to them, it's like, oh my gosh, you're being abusive. You're, you know, out of control. You're this because we have a problem with their bad behavior. So, yeah, that kind of stuff. If anything, I tend to be so thankful when differences like that come up early on, because it just saves so much time. It's like, oh wow, this would have never worked because you don't understand like what appropriate behavior is, and um how to be tactful and mature in your communication, and you can't take any criticism whatsoever. Like, that's not going to work. So, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot out there. There was a Saturday Night Live skit too. Oh, not too long ago that was talking about this is more of the it's aimed at the guys, like, a lot of the guys out there that, um, kind of try to build up a rapport with a woman and then get really upset and offended if she somehow doesn't have interest in them, and the whole skit was guys that it's like the fake feminists. I'll be like, "Oh, I love your shirt," or this one like in this skit, the one woman's wearing a shirt that says, like, "The future is female," and this guy's like, "Oh, I love your shirt," or, "Oh, I love this band," and she's like, "Oh, wow, this guy seems pretty cool," and then he asks her out, and she's like, "Oh, no, I'm not interested," or whatever, and then he ends up calling her names and storms off, and, uh, that kinda stuff does happen too. Not that even it it needs to be to that extreme that a guy needs to pretend to be a feminist, but yeah. Anyways, okay. Mothering Hand says, "I'm seeing a counselor and I'm obviously on the fence as to if I should stay with her. Except for a book she recommended that I read, she gives no suggestions. I'm thinking about finding another counselor." Well, for most counselors, they don't give um, suggestions or advice. So, especially with people that are leaving in an abusive or controlling relationship, because kind of the thought process is, well, w- we don't want people to think that that other people outside of them have all the answers. So if a person's in a controlling relationship and they get out of that and then they go to let's say a counselor, and then the counselor's like, "Oh yes, here's my advice, here's what I think you should do." Well, then they're just swapping one controlling person for the next. The problem with that is there really needs to be a lot of, I would say, like, re-education done with a person, just like when a person gets out of a cult, there needs to be this whole deprogramming process that they go to. So, that's what's missing with abusive relationships, and that's the challenge that I think a lot of mental health professionals have with well, that's one of many, because I just don't think that this stuff is understood to the level that it needs to be, frankly, by the mental health community, and for survivors of this, we need some sort of direction and some sort of clarity, and that can be a challenge. One approach you might want I'm always a big fan of open, honest, sincere communication, especially in situations like this. So, I would encourage you next session to flat out tell her, "I found this one book that you recommended really helpful. I feel like I'm fumbling in the dark, and I know that or I'm guessing that your role as a counselor, that you're not wanting to give advice or suggestions, that you're wanting me to kind of, um, you know, find my own way, but I feel like I really need some more direction, and I was hoping that that you could talk specifically about boundaries, standards, deal breakers, PTSD, any type of struggle that you're having. So it's more like psychoeducational is the term for that, and see what your counselor says. Also, you can ask for more book recommendations. Uh, I can put up a list. My website is still under construction, but I can work on posting a list of different books I highly recommend. I know, well, I know I'm biased because I wrote them, but the 2 well, you can find my books by looking up Dana Morningstar on Amazon or Barnes& and Noble or wherever, but I really feel it's a s my first book, Start Here, is a really great starting place for people that are looking to just understand what on earth happened. It has all of the terminology, it's laid out as I just wanted to create a book that somebody could pass another person and be like, "Hey, just literally start here. Then let's go on to step 2." Step 2 with that is my book, Out of the Fog, and that covers a lot of it takes the concepts mentioned in book 1, and then it compares and contrasts them to a healthier understanding of them. And then book 3, The Narcissist's Playbook, talks specifically about it really is a deep dive into manipulation, like what it is, what it isn't. And the end of it, the last, I would say 25% or so of the book is um, all about breaking free from manipulation, doing a self-inventory, self-examination on some personality traits that are frequently preyed upon by manipulative people. So you can find, just FYI, you can find those 3 books also on Audible. And if you're into audiobooks, uh, and if you're near a local library that carries Hoopla, which is an audiobook platform, you can also call them and request them to add that to the library audiobook collection. And then that way it's free. So those are just some options, but there's quite a few fantastic books out there. I will work on, add that to my list, work on coming up with a list to add. I cannot see in here. It is too dark. There it is. Okay. My Cambly suggestion. And then I will come up with maybe like my top 5 to 7 books. We do have a book club discussion here that normally happens the last Thursday of every month. So that's another option to go back and look at the previous book club videos. Okay, so let's see. Hayes White says, hi, Dana, can you talk about narcissistic abuse and the effect on your health with fatigue and brain fog and etc.? Sure thing. It is sorry, getting distracted by the chat. It's like squirrel. Narcissistic abuse, the effect on your health with fatigue, brain fog, etc. Whenever a person is under extreme amounts of stress, it's kind of like the equivalent of having too many tabs on your computer open at the same time. It just slows everything way, way down. And the more we kind of make sense of what happened to us, a lot of times that stress will resolve, and those feelings of brain fog and fatigue will also resolve because of that. So sometimes time is just a component, which is one of the reasons I strongly encourage people to make self-care a top priority right now. And that might be incredibly difficult because you're like, oh my gosh, no, I've got so many things to do. My life is blown apart. I've got to heal. I've got to put things together. I've got to do all this damage control. And it's all of this energy and anxiety about, and the last thing we might want to do is focus on self-care. But now is the time to do that. So it's really, and the purpose of that is it's getting ourselves out of that fight or flight, which happens after extreme stress, and back into that rest and digest mode. So back to that sense of that kind of like state of normalcy, I guess is what you might want to call it. So doing things to bring peace and relaxation back into your life can really help. The book that we're going to be discussing on the 24th of this month, Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. Again, also audiobook. You can find it on Hoopla. Or request it from your local library. I also think part of it might be on YouTube, but I would encourage you to get it through your local library or Audible. His approach is basically completing the emotion. And I think what he says makes absolute sense. And it's something I'd really like to dive deeper into the science behind it. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion about that book. But anyways, back to the whole kind of brain fog. If you can at all possible, put off or kind of outsource major decisions that you need to make, I would encourage that. So now is not the time to be thinking about, oh, I'm going to move across the country and I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to sell my house and I'm going to make all these major life changes. Now is not the time to be doing that, because your brain, when our brains are in fight or flight mode, the the frontal part of our brain, the neocortex, the part that makes us human, it's the logic and critical thinking part of our brain, is greatly diminished. And depending on the degree of fight or flight we're in, it can be completely non-existent. So if this is how and why people panic and they do irrational things. You see this on the news. You're like, oh, so and so died because they ran into a burning house to get their purse, or to grab family photos, and you just think, what on earth were they thinking? Well, they weren't thinking. They were completely reactive. Uh, so that's part of it, is just kind of understanding that when we are in fight or flight, that part of our brain is greatly diminished. And now is not the time to be needing or to try to even be using that part of our brain. It's just like wading through, you know, uh, knee deep mud. It's just slow going because the processing power of our brain it's really greatly diminished. Let's see here. I agree completely. Huffle Mom says, I've learned it's best to refer to the behavior I don't like rather than the person doing it. Yes, I would agree completely. That can make a person, so she says, for example, that behavior is abusive. Yes, that tends to go over somewhat better with people. So, even with children, it's kind of like a parenting thing. Instead of saying, stop, you're being bad, or you're being bad, you're going in the timeout, addressing that behavior specifically. It's not okay to hit your brother. That's not, basically, it's not okay to hit your brother. uh, that's a hurtful thing that you're doing. The behavior is the problem, and the behavior is what's putting you in timeout. You're not inherently bad. It's amazing the way that people perceive perceive things. So subtle changes in language like that can make a really powerful difference, especially for children, but even for adults, uh, because it doesn't define them, and it allows them to save face and to the ability to change. So if we're saying, like, I found this to be really hurtful, or I'm not okay with this, or I would appreciate that you don't talk to me like that, or um, whatever, it it can feel, it can raise less defenses with another person. Um, mm, Purple Belt says, let's see here. Hold on a second. I got to move over my mute button. I'm still not 100% over my cold here. Okay, Purple Belt says, question. I think my 20-year-old son is being manipulated. A beautiful girl said that she used to be fat and diabetic, but her Instagram before and after photos look fake. How do I get him to listen to his gut? Well, at a minimum, I would encourage him to Google her photos, because if it is fake, they're probably taken off some other site. And, um, I would just encourage him to go really slow, to not, but there's lots of deceptive people out there. I'd have him watch a few episodes that MTV show Catfished. This kind of stuff happens frequently. So, if he ever decides to meet this girl, I wouldn't go fly across the country. I would definitely make sure that they're meeting in a public place. And at a minimum for him, they can do a Skype or a Zoom or like a FaceTime thing. And I would encourage that sooner than later. So just so, because anybody can take good pictures. So, um, you don't want to fall in love with the the fantasy of who you think this person is. Grace says, "I'm so scared for my teenage daughter to start dating. I really just hope I've covered all the bases. The last thing she wants to hear every day is life lessons, though." Yep. I can absolutely understand that. I think the main thing to hammer home with dating is, um, just for her to realize when she's being mistreated, or at a minimum, when she's being treated in a way that she's not okay with. Because a lot of people, men and women, tend to excuse bad behavior. "Oh, this person had a bad childhood. Oh, they had a bad day. Oh, it's because they came from another country, or they," you know what I mean? There's all kinds of ways that we can excuse problematic behavior, and it's really important that, that we don't, that we address it, because the stuff doesn't just go away on its own. It tends to get worse with time, not better. So if she can have an idea of what is not okay with her, and then how to handle that. So either through being assertive or getting some sort of physical distance from the person, depending on the behavior. That's a big one. But yeah, I don't blame you. I can only imagine in this day and age, especially with technology, there are just so many deceitful people out there that I can imagine it would be terrifying to think about that, about her dating and what all is out there. Okay, let's see. Elizabeth says, "I read online someone complaining about the term toxic person, as if these people didn't exist, meaning it's us not being understanding enough if we think they are toxic." Yeah, um I mean that's a whole big thing. I think at a minimum, it's important to know what's nourishing for you and what's draining for you. And we can still it's difficult because I don't know if there really is any type of euphemism for like a draining person, a toxic person. You know, um, it's definitely not us not being understanding enough. But I don't know. There's a place I think we can get to in healing where we you know, you just learn so much about dysfunctional behavior and all of this, where we see it for what it is, we realize that it's dysfunctional, and there really isn't a whole lot of judgment because we just see it as this person, um, you know, is just a destructive person. They're just very emotionally immature for a wide variety of reasons, and it's tragic. It's tragic for them. It's tragic for everybody around them. And of course, it's a lot easier to take a non-judgmental approach when we're not tangled up in it. When we've gotten tangled up in it and we've just been dragged through broken glass and then dragged through hell, it's of course a person's going to be really angry and you know, it's and that kind of stuff is enraging when people kind of take the higher ground, or they try to have this like moral superiority of like, well, I just think it's, you know, you shouldn't say toxic and you shouldn't say narcissist and blah blah blah. And it's like, you know, does it make you feel smug and superior to go around correcting other people, especially victims of abuse or victims of people that are sociopaths? Like what, you know, it yeah, I would I just disengage from that because it's, you know, that kind of stuff is just toxic. It's like that toxic positivity, you know, of, "Oh, we're just so, you know, we're just so enlightened and we're just so much better than everybody else." It's like, well, that's still kinda toxic. So, ah, okay, let's see. Okay, I'm scrolling here. Um, oh, just FYI too, are we are working on getting the podcast up and going again. We have a few that have gone live in the past like week or two. So Apple iTunes is still causing issues. We're still working on that. I emailed them again today to figure out what was going on with that. But you can go to my website, thriveafterabuse.com, and you can see on the homepage at least all of the podcasts are there. So that's a spot. Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, um, Stitcher, lots of other places the podcast is out, but it's just not showing up on iTunes just yet. Okay, Semper Grove says, "Hi, Dana. My husband and I have big parenting differences. How can I assert boundaries in front of kids without undermining him? He has narcissistic tendencies, not empathetic to them most times." I would say, uh, I would encourage you to get on the same page with him, and not in front of the kids. So, regardless of whether or not he has narcissistic tendencies, it's really ideal if two parents can function as a united front. So, if they can agree on, okay, we speak with one voice, like this is how we're going to handle this. So, there's not this kind of pitting one parent against the other. There's not confusion over, well, geez, dad says I have to be in bed at 9, but mom says I can stay up till 10. Or boundaries, I don't know, on clothing, on friends, on curfew, on bedtime, on doing homework, whatever it might be, that you guys take some time to sit down um and and talk about it, and just say, like, I really want us to speak with one voice. I want us to be a united front on this. What are what are your thoughts about this? I would, if you, I frankly, I was going to say, if you feel like you need to, but I would just encourage you to do this because it always, memories are infallible, or fallible. Memories are definitely fallible. So I would encourage you to write things down so you guys can refer back to this list of, no, actually, we did say that this is what X, Y, and Z are going to happen. And if there's an issue, if one of you doesn't abide by the new list of boundaries, that uh, you guys talk about it between the two of you, not around the kids. So that's just going to make everything a lot easier. And then it allows, because to correct the other parent in front of the children, especially with a parent who's kind of high in defensiveness, that's going to be spitting fuel on the fire. It's not going to go well. And it's going to potentially make one of you look bad, and it's going to undermine the authority of the other. So, let's see. Elizabeth says, "Oh, nobody's perfect. Every relationship has its ups and downs, etc. Things that people who don't get it say and push you into the spiral of trying to fix the toxic relationship." Yes. And my book, Out of the Fog, addresses all of that. It addresses what I refer to as well-intended bad advice. And that's a lot of it. Oh, well, nobody's perfect. And, who are you to judge? Or, well, this person's your parent, or it goes on and on. So, oh, you've got to forgive. You need to really forgive them in order to move forward. This really, that book really combs through everything, and it can help to um, give, if you're looking to have that discussion with another person, it can help to kind of give you, at least to give you my 2 cents on it, about how I tend to respond to things like that. So, it just kind of preparing a response ahead of time really helps to deal with that, because a lot of times people just don't know. If they've never lived in it, yeah, all of this, I mean, advice is only as good as the context it's given in. So, like, for example, if I were to say, "Oh, real estate's a great investment." Well, it depends on the context. It depends on where you live in the world, and, how much money you have in the bank, and if you can afford vacancy, and if you can afford upkeep, and there's other factors at play. So when people say, "Oh, well, you know nobody's perfect." True, but that doesn't mean that abuse is somehow okay. So it's just the context. The context matters. Oh, I like that. Helpful mom. I think she's talking about referring to uh brain fog, and how to kind of give yourself some good self-care during this. And she said, I have a therapist who said I should limit my list of tasks to 4 things. I think that's fantastic advice. Get those done, then you can add on 4 more if you want. But if you want to stop at 4 a day, I think that's definitely plenty of things to get done in a day. And that way, because that anxiety, that fight or flight can really drive us. And, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I'm in that high anxiety mode, I tend to make ridiculously long to-do lists. And it feels productive, and it feels like I'm actually getting a sense of stability and moving forward, but it's not. It's really contributing to my anxiety, because of course nobody can get all these things done in a day or even a month. And then just seeing a list with more and more and more and more and more things on them it's not helpful. So I like that. Putting 4 things on your list a day and then just calling it good. Purple Belt says, Dana, would your new book be good to give to my 20-year-old then, that I think is being manipulated? I guess if he would read it, I or listen to it on audiobook. Um, Trying to think what would be helpful to get through. I did a series a while back. It should be in my playlists, about dating and kind of watching out for online predators. So that would be something to search in my channel, going under playlists and looking for that. There's maybe, I don't know, there's not that many videos in there. I think there's less than 7. And each video kind of talks about different topics and just things to look out for. This is, I would recommend this for anybody, because a lot of people, especially if a person's been out of the dating world I would say for more than 2 years, it's important to get familiar with what's out there. It's a very different world. Especially online dating. What online dating used to be 5-10 years ago, radically different now. The number of fake profiles of people that are married, that are just looking to cheat, or that are male and female, that are just completely lying, that are just scams, trying to scam people out of money. Uh, and the level of scam can go really deep. So it's, if a person's basically, if they're living in another country, if there's a huge, if it just seems too good to be true, if there's an excuse as to why they can't FaceTime, these are the signs that this is a scam. So getting familiar with what online scams look like, as a general rule of thumb, if somebody that you meet online is asking for money, that's another big red flag. So, and I've even come across people that this has happened in person. There was one gal, this was years ago, who'd met a guy, first date. They went to a casino. He had this whole story that he left his wallet at home, or that the wallet was lost. He was really bummed. And she was like, oh, well, we're already here. And he seemed so great and they hit it off so well. And then she ends up throughout the course of the night, quote unquote, loaning him $500. And then he, drops her off at the end of the night. And of course, she never hears from him again. So things like that. You just want to go slow. Elizabeth said, oh, this is such a great, I'm so glad you mentioned this, Elizabeth. She says, I used to feel like self-care was a ton of work and a boring task. I'm glad that I now understand its importance. Yes, it's so huge. So I had this realization the other day, and this might be really basic, especially for like mental health providers out there. I just had never, sometimes it takes me a little longer. Okay. I just hadn't made this connection. But in the mental health field, uh, one of the ways that people are looked at in their background is looked at is kind of assessing for what's known as risk factors and then what's known as protective factors. So risk factors might be maybe there's current substance abuse, maybe there's a family history of substance abuse, maybe there's uh, um, low the unemployment, no income, no social support. That's a big one. Um, and these risk factors can contribute, and then there's quite a few of them, but they can contribute to a wide variety of things. Basically, anything problematic is what a risk factor can contribute to. Substance abuse, abusive relationships, um, you know, um, kind of unplanned pregnancies, um, you name it, you name it. So, but on the other side of that, there's what's known as protective factors. So protective factors can be a fairly strong social support, potentially um, some sort of spirituality, or um, and the reason that is oftentimes helpful is because it's something for a person to lean on. Um, let's see. If a person has, if they have money in the bank, if they have, uh, they completed high school, or if they have a degree, if um, they have either they don't have, like they have solid mental health, or their mental health is being adequately addressed and treated. Maybe they're in therapy, or that they have insight. That's a huge protective factor. Just being like, this person has insight that there's issues, and or they have emotional maturity, and they have that ability to self-reflect and to realize, okay, this is what I need to work on, or this is a problem. They have that level of discernment. And so anyways, the point of this is the aha moment I had was connecting self-care to what are considered risk factors and what are considered protective factors. So before, I viewed self-care as just kind of more of, I don't know, kind of free floating, nice things that we can do for ourselves, like taking the time to get a massage, taking the time for a bubble bath, which that's not me. I cannot stand taking baths. It completely skeeves me out, the thought of marinating in my own filth. But if you're a bath person, that can be self-care. Um, taking time, I don't know, whatever, reading a book, or going to bed early, or sleeping in, or all of these things. All of those things are great, and those definitely are forms of self-care, but you will get more bang for your buck if you can focus on doing self-care in the areas that are going to increase your protective factors. So mainly increasing your social support. That's such a huge one. So if time is if time is at a minimum, that can be a good way to invest it, is to get involved with, cultivating friendships, maybe that you've kind of let die on the vine, or relationships with certain family members that are nourishing, or going to some meetup.com groups in your area and learning new hobbies, or engaging with new people, growing your social support. That is huge. But then also checking in with the other stuff. I don't mean to make light of that because that can be absolutely game changing too. But, going to if you're struggling with addiction of any kind, going to AA or an NA meeting, calling your sponsor, um, taking time to read a book, taking time to just unwind, um, taking time to cultivate friendships and whatever that might look like for you, taking time to get organized. If you're let's say, if you are always running late and you feel like when you wake up in the morning, like you're just being shot out of a cannon and you hit the ground running, then some self-care might be laying out your clothes the night before. It might be laying out your clothes a week at a time, making sure everything is, it's clean, it's ironed, it goes together. That can decrease the stress in the morning, and that can really go far as setting the tone of the day. So you're not feeling so frazzled, especially if you're already struggling with anxiety. Doing little things like that and being proactive at decreasing the things that we can control help a lot. Cutting out or at a minimum cutting way down on caffeine if you're struggling with anxiety. um, Allowing yourself, an extra 10, 20 minutes to get to work. That way you're not, y- you know, um, squeezing the steering wheel all the way there and you're in a huge hurry to get there. You're taking your time. You can make the time to listen to a podcast or do something enjoyable. So that's awesome to hear, Zachary. He says, I've made such great friends with some people this year, and it's been huge for me. It makes a difference to feel like you belong. Yeah, absolutely. And to feel like you're supported and that you can support others. It's just that sense of connection. That's definitely something I feel like, especially here in the United States, that's becoming, that's kind of dying out. It's just becoming more and more rare. Our lives can pick up so much speed and everything's online that we can really lose that. So, let's see. Well, thank you. I am glad that you see it that way. Stacy says this live stream is self-care. Yeah, I think it definitely can be. The connection with other survivors is really powerful, and um, it's really cool to see. I don't know, to see all the connection in here and discussing lessons learned. That's perhaps one of my favorite parts about this live stream is hearing about the changes that people have made in their life, or because sometimes oftentimes we don't need to have these massive overhauls of our life. Sometimes it's just one aha moment that shifts us 2 or 3 degrees in a different direction, and with time we're at a very different place. It's just so cool. Sebastian, oh, hello. And oh my goodness, he says, my ex called me today, but I didn't answer. It's been 3 weeks, no contact. What do I do? Well, I think you probably know my answer to this, but I'm going to put this back on you. So let's phrase it this way. What do you think your future self would hope that you do, and why? So answering that question, and I think you will get the clarity that you need. Have you made your list? We talk about this all the time, but making a list of for when you miss her or for when you miss him. So when these moments, if and when they do happen, when they do make contact again, and if those feelings of nostalgia are kind of pulling at you, or curiosity, even if it's not nostalgia, just curiosity is pulling at you, that you can go and pull out your list and be like, oh, right. Here's all of the reasons this is just completely toxic for me. Reading through your list, that'll help kinda snap you out of thinking that things are other than they are, and then moving forward. The more clear you can get with, "This is all smoke and mirrors, there's nothing here but pain," the the easier it is to just not entertain that kinda stuff. Let's see here, let me scroll up. Hey, PM says, "Hey, Dana, I'm glad I finally made a live chat." Welcome. Yeah, we're kinda hobbling through tonight with this. YouTube has got something going on, and so I'm having to read the chat on my phone. Uh, so you gotta bear with us tonight. It's not normally like this. Let's see. Yeah, Zachary says, "Yes, social support is a big one, the research suggests." Absolutely. It it is perhaps, I would say, if it's not the number one factor, it's, definitely in the top 3. With, recovery in general, with substance abuse, one of the things that's continually talked about is the need to change people, places, and things, and that's what it's gonna take to get sober, to get completely sober, and oftentimes, it's like that with a toxic relationship. It's gotta be people, places, and things. Because the people can be a trigger, and they can be just as toxic too, with if we're trying to quit smoking, quit drinking, quit a bad relationship, whatever it might be, if those other people are still, they don't see a problem with it and they're still engaging with all of that, that's just going to suck us back down into it. And then the places and the things, it's all emotional triggers. So setting ourselves up to win is absolutely huge, and getting a new support system, and uh, going to new places and putting away things that are triggering. Even if you're not ready to get rid of them right away, you can, or let's say if you're like, Hey, I got furniture, and this is all I got. Like, I can't put all this away. I'll be sitting on the floor." Even rearranging it, or just getting a throw blanket, or somehow making it yours, can really help to just change up kind of the mental associations that you might have. Oh, yikes. Yeah. Wonder Woman says, "My daughter moved in with someone she fell in love with online. She wants out now. She's in another state. He doesn't have any sense of hygiene, or cares to clean at all. He's also on his phone all day." Those are the things that you can't tell online. Yes, absolutely. And we talked about this, and she said, Wonder Woman says, "They were friends online for years and even slept with Skype on, and she thought she knew him." And yeah, that's one of the challenges, because being friends with somebody isn't the same as dating somebody. Whole different round of triggers and communication, and everything shows itself when there's a romantic relationship versus when there's just a friendship. It's just a different level of knowing another person, and romantic relationships tend to bring forth a person's, and we'll say, unresolved business. We all have it, but that tends to really kick up a person's unresolved business, like a friendship or a coworker type dynamic doesn't. And relationships don't start to get real until that idealized stage wears off, and that generally takes about 90 days or so, um, for things to start kinda settling into the reality of the relationship. That's more of that negotiation phase, where you start seeing the other person, where each person starts seeing the other as an actual person, not so much the fantasy, and people aren't on their best behavior. You start seeing like, "Oh, wow, okay, this person's, they're a lot they're a lot messier than I anticipated, or they're a lot tidier than I anticipated, or, they have a weird dynamic with their I don't know, with their mom or with their child, or, we're so not on the same page with money, spending and saving, or with religion, or with, you name it. Because all that stuff, when a person's dating, it's so easy for us to see things in a positive light. We see this person, "Oh, this person's they're so generous, and oh my gosh, we go out to eat all the time, and it's just so wonderful." But then you really get into a relationship, and you're like, "This person just spends money like it's water." And so what was viewed as generosity before is now viewed as financial irresponsibility. Just because you have more context, you've seen that kind of behavior in more light. And it's just going slow is hard, but it is so important. Uh, yeah. Okay, Jack, thank you. He says it's asking for somebody else. How do you recover your reputation from a narcissistic smear campaign? Hold on just a second. I got a cough here. Well, here's my 2 cents on this is none of us have control over our reputation. Reputation is uh, just, that can easily be destroyed with gossip, with, as we all know, with an abusive person or just a pathological person who has just a really skewed version of reality. I'm a big fan of not worrying about your reputation, but instead focusing on your character. So if you build your character and you're able to sustain that to where, you're doing it's the actions. You're doing the right things for the right reasons, then oftentimes it makes your reputation a little bit more ironclad. And when a person and it's building it's more important at the end of the day that we're focused more on our character anyhow. Because like I said, reputation, that kind of stuff is superficial. It can be built or destroyed with networking, or you get one malicious person, it's too fleeting. So if you build your character in time, other people are going to know your character, and more importantly, you're going to know your character. And so if somebody's talking a bunch of nonsense about you or making up stuff, then I would encourage people just to say, well, like anybody can say anything. And it's scary how quickly a reputation can be tarnished by, a person with a really skewed sense of what's going on. I would just encourage you to look at my character. If you've known me for any length of time, you know, look at that, take that into account, and then just kind of leave it at that. I wouldn't spend any time on your reputation. Let's see. Let me let me scroll up here. Oh, let me scroll down. Uh, Yep, Zachary, I agree. He says, I think that's what's so important is that you stand solidly in your reality. You know the truth, and no one can take that from you. And you could even make them make the point of, if they say, well, this person said that you lied and cheated and stole and all of this. I would just make the point of, yeah, it's really easy to say, it's really easy to say words, isn't it? So let's say, for example, their name is Sarah. So if Sarah tells you, "Oh yeah, well, I heard, your ex said that you stole a bunch of money and that you defrauded her out of the house or him out of the house and blah blah blah." Just to be like, "Well, okay, but that's not true." It's easy to say words. Um, like I could say, well, Sarah stole from me. She stole my purse and she did all of these terrible things. Do you see how easy that is? Like, that's the problem. And, there's kind of two sides to every story, but then there's also the truth. And the truth often, it involves facts. So the problem with abusive people is that they spin reality to fit their narrative, and they always feel like the victim. If they don't get their way, they feel like the victim is what it is. So, they might have been abusive, they might have cheated nonstop. You file for a divorce, you end up getting half of the house. They're going to go crying about it to somebody, how mean and unfair you were, and you wouldn't give them another chance, and that you're getting half of the house and it's not fair, and that you're breaking up the family. Like, that's how they spin it. That's how they see it. They don't see their part in it. That's part of the problem. That's part of that mindset. That's a problem. So, okay, let's see here. Oh, good. I'm glad, Rob. He said that was really helpful with regards to character versus reputation. Good. Yeah, I'm glad. And then the added benefit to that too, and that's I think a good some good behavior to really role model for kids as well. So if you've got children around that are hearing about this kind of thing, making a point to let them know, I'm gonna focus on building my character. Like, this is what I do. And I'm not doing it to impress anybody. I'm not doing it for any other reason. Then this is just the kind of person that I want to be. So, okay, let's see. Let's scroll up here. There was a gal on last week who was feeling really slighted that I didn't get to her question. I honestly just did not even see it. So, if she comes back, we'll do our best to try to catch it in the chat with what we can see here. And no, my chat is not back up on YouTube. Is it back up on anybody else's YouTube on desktop? That's a great question. I'm not sure if you pronounce your name George or Jorge, but he says, "Hello, Dana. One of the red flags of a narcissist is the amount of crazy people in their past, but an empath that's attracted several narcissists can also say the same thing. How can we distinguish?" Really good catch. I would say in large part it's going slow and just paying attention. Here's the other thing too. I really need to remake that whole video series because there people that's kind of the benefit. The benefit of the internet is when you get so many people asking detailed questions like that or thinking about a topic in a way that I hadn't before, it brings I don't know, at least for me, I start to see areas that I need to better address. So with that said, I guess so here's what I would say today, because those videos were made like 5 years ago. I wouldn't focus at all on trying to distinguish whether or not a person is a narcissist or not. I would focus more on what kind of behavior is workable for you and what kind of behavior isn't. And that might make a person feel a little bit panicky of, no, 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 I need to really find out, are they indeed like highly problematic, or kind of where along that spectrum are they? Is this personality disorder stuff, or is this, you know, somehow workable? It's You're going to be, as you're engaging with somebody, the whole goal is to get to know them slowly, and you're establishing trust in an appropriate way. So you're paying attention to, uh, their different interactions with you, and you're paying attention, especially to the level of communication that you have. So, especially with regards to you setting boundaries and your ability to work as a team. So, let me give you an example. Because here's the thing, it's not just narcissists that are a problem. It's there's a wide range of dysfunctional behavior out there that's a problem. And so it's going to be, and we all have some of this stuff within ourselves too. So it's part of it is being able to see it clearly in other people, but then the second part of that is being able to see our own unresolved stuff within ourselves and then work towards resolving that. That's a lot harder because it's, we're a lot closer to it because we, you know, I think most people tend to walk around thinking that, um, that it's everybody else that's the problem. I guess in short, where we're just human beings are just kind of wired that way. We're wired to think that we're doing the good thing or the right thing, even when we're not, which is what's so scary. But um, so I guess kind of, being able to discern when you're being treated in a way that's not okay with you, and then knowing how to address that in a tactful, in a solutions oriented way, and then what you need to do about it. So let me give you an example. My brother had a female friend, and truly a female friend. Nothing had ever happened between them. He was not interested in her physically at all. My brother is an absolute gym rat, and this woman was an absolute gym rat. They had that in common, and that was about it. And she what kind of kept trying to, I don't even know what you would call it, kind of pin him into a corner with things, I guess. Wanting him She was trying to want him to kind of like wanting him to behave like a boyfriend, even though there was nothing there. So for example, um, my brother cusses periodically, and she had made a comment one time that they were in the car and he was cussing about something, and she said, um, I really don't like it, like when you cuss, or I don't like men to cuss around me or something like that. And my brother my brother's like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you." He's like, I cuss, so I'm not gonna change that, you know? And so she was setting a boundary, which she's entitled to try to do that. However, he wasn't okay with that. So now the ball is back in her court of, okay, well, he's not gonna stop. So then now what are you gonna do? And her boundary too, in all fairness, was really trying to control his behavior, which, that's a problem. So there was that incident. And then they went out for a dinner, and my brother had said ahead of time, "Hey, I'm basically here to kind of network. I don't know how this is going to go, but I, basically plan on being here for, if you're going to go with me, we're going to be here for about 3 or 4 hours." And she really wanted to go out to the bar and go listen to some live music. And he had said, "Hey, I'm planning on being here for 3 or 4 hours. If you don't want to go, like, that's cool, but I'm not leaving." And so they get there, and within half an hour, she's bored and she wants to leave, and she's pushing him to leave and then trying to make him feel bad about it. "Oh, well, if you were a gentleman, you would leave, and I'm not having a good time, and I want to go, and blah, blah, blah." And, he finally was like, we're not dating. And if I told you ahead of time, like, I need to be here. So if you want to go, I guess then you're going to get an Uber because I'm not leaving. So I guess kind of, I guess things like that. That's more subtle types of behavior is what I'm talking about. Is she a bad person? Is she a narcissist? I don't think so. My brother doesn't think so. Uh, you know, they just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. Yeah, her behavior was a little bit controlling, but it didn't work for him. And it finally got to the point where he was like, "I can't handle this. You keep trying to put me into this certain role in your life. Like, you want me to be this person that I'm not. And you want to kind of take the lead on this. We're just friends. So this isn't going to work for me." So the point of me sharing that is more subtle situations like that. That's where relationships, I think, are kind of, um, they either move forward or they end. So it's knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you and how to address it. So in both of the situations, my brother was very assertive. He'd said, "Hey, you know what? No, this is me. Like I'm not planning on stopping cussing anytime soon. And that's just how I talk. And we're friends." You know what I mean? Like this, this is just how I talk. And hey, I'm going to be at this event. He tells her ahead of time. And then she wants to try to leave after he said that. So he was trying to get on the same page with things with her. And in all fairness, with the language thing, I think he did end up toning it down a little bit with certain words. But, you know, he just is who he is, and she knew that kind of getting into it. So, um there's different one of the books that I'm working on right now, I want to say there's 12. I put in like kind of 12 dimensions of compatibility that are really important. And there's chemistry, there's communication, there's compatibility, there's what are some of the other ones? Conflict, conflict resolution. Um I don't know. I'd have to go look it up. But there's lots of different dimensions in a relationship, that things that need to get addressed and resolved and kind of getting on the same page with. So it's so much more than just a lot, like I said, it's so much more than what a lot of my earlier videos talked about. It's not so cut and dry. There's so much more than that. A lot of those videos mainly talked about, hey, these are just some warning signs, for of a potentially problematic person. And just to realize that not everybody out there is like you, and not everybody out there has the same morals and motivations as you or as me or as anybody else. So it's just important that we go slow and see behavior, for what it is. Okay. Because here's the thing too, real quick, with learning that negotiation phase, it's ongoing, frankly, because that's what happens when you have two people that authentically show up in a friendship and a work dynamic and family and a relationship, what have you. There's going to be continual differences on lots of things, on what to eat and what kind of hairstyle looks good and what kind of car you're going to get or where you're going to live, or like so many, what you're going to watch on TV. There's so many things like that. And being able to um, effectively bring up concerns and talk about them in an honest way and then have them resolved is huge. And not, and when I say resolved, I don't mean that we're the ones that are continually giving in. I mean, we're the ones that sometimes when something is resolved, it means the other person leaves, or it means that we leave the relationship. So, yeah, lots of skills there. Sam says, "Are you gonna do a renewed red flag series?" I should. I really feel I should. That series, when I did that series, well, here's what I'm thinking with it. Um, I think what I will do is I will keep the old videos up because people do still find those incredibly helpful, but then I will just put a link on them, like a video in a video saying, click here to watch the more updated one. Because some of the things when I started those videos, I took a lot of advice. I didn't listen to myself. You know, took a lot of advice that I really should, that didn't resonate with me and I just shouldn't have, but I thought other people knew better. One of those being, people kept telling me, you really need to basically just focus on women. So that's what and you're familiar with women and various forms of abuse. You've lived it, you've worked with it. Just talk about that. And so that's what I did. But then the unintended consequence of that was that there were a lot of men that felt really silenced and offended and hurt, because they're like, well, hey, well, what about me? I lived this too. It's not all men. And so there was that component to it. Plus, a lot of these videos, they weren't scripted. It was just off the cuff. So that would be something I would do different to really tighten them up and stay on topic. And then also to talk about the wider context of each thing so it's not so black or white. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll, scroll, scroll. That's a tough one, Mike. He says, "How do you handle a coworker that throws you under the bus?" So far, I've just stayed cool and normal as usual, but I'm extra careful around the coworker. Well, I think you could, do a couple different things. One, you could confront them and just say, if they know, like, do they know? Do they kn- do they know that you know that they threw you under the bus? Uh, I guess either way, confronting them, hey, uh, I don't know, Jane in HR said that, or at the meeting today, I felt like you kind of threw me under the bus there a little bit. Is Are you frustrated about something? Is there something that we need to talk about? And I would just put it out on the table and see. And the reason, and it depends on context. It really does, just like anything else. If this is a somewhat reasonable, rational person who you don't think would make your life a living hell, but that maybe just is kind of passive or passive aggressive, sometimes laying things out like that can take communication to a much better level when they realize, hey, we can just talk about this. Like, you don't need to be passive aggressive. You don't need to slam doors and, you know, um, turn off the coffee and throw me under the bus in meetings and then pretend like you didn't, or pretend like everything's fine. Like, we work here. We spend 40 hours a week here, and life's too short to have tension, and let's just not have it at work, and see what they say. It can definitely be awkward at first, but sometimes depending on the other person, if you can kind of create that dynamic where, hey, it's safe. Like, if I'm doing something that's annoying you, let me know, because we're here 40 hours a week. Life's too short. Don't want tension. Like, let's just enjoy being here as much as we possibly can, and see what they say. But if it's something that you feel like, oh man, if I even mention this or whatever, it's just gonna keep stirring things up, then I think it would be, um, to kind of figure, because life's too short to go to work and have all this unresolved tension day in and day out. That kind of stuff just sucks energy and makes you sick. So I would figure out, okay, how bad is it? And how ongoing is it? And is this a sign that it's time to start putting your resume together? Okay, let's see here. Gareth asks, how many videos do you have in total, Dana? Oh gosh, I have no idea. I have no idea. Hundreds, hundreds. I don't keep track. That's on my list of things to do, is to really get better. Like, to get better with my YouTube channel. I hit a wall. You guys know this. I hit a wall a few years ago. I just got so overwhelmed and frustrated with my lack of understanding of technology and things in general. And I um, just kind of hit burnout and stopped putting in a lot of effort into my channel. And that's something I need to pick up again. So, let's see. Yeah. Interested says, I confronted a coworker once for throwing me under the bus and they acted clueless, like it was not their intention. Then they continued to do it. And that's very common. And the reason for that is, we all have different communication styles. And sometimes we have all four of them. Well, I think not sometimes. We all have all four of them within us. It's just whatever we're most comfortable, uh, what communication style we're most comfortable using at the time. So there's passive aggressive, there's assertive, and then there's aggressive. And, a passive person might just not say anything. They might be the opposite. They might be the real people pleasing out there. Oh, everything's fine. I love this job. I love you. You know, everything's great. And then the passive aggressive person might say all that, but then they're going to be the ones that are, turning off the coffee or, just kind of doing little subtle things, being really loud on the phone, doing things to kind of settle the score in their own way. The aggressive person is just going to start lashing out and settling the score in their own way. But the assertive person is gonna just bring it all out onto the table. The problem with being assertive is, well, for one, this stuff's not taught. So most people don't even know how to be assertive. And even if they do, because it's not taught, being assertive requires being vulnerable. It requires being honest with what we're really feeling. And that's not comfortable for the vast majority of people because this isn't most people, if they don't have these skills, they don't know how to be that way. So it's a lot easier for some people to turn off the coffee maker or, to I don't know, burn popcorn or just little mischievous things to kind of settle the score. It's easier for them to do that to kind of get their way or whatever to settle the score with the coworker than it is to actually say, you know what? It really frustrates me that you're consistently late every single day. Because that's hard. And it's, especially if a person grew up in some sort of punishing environment where it was verbal or emotional or physical or what have you. And if that other person, all of this unresolved stuff comes to the table in moments like that. So if we were to say, even if we were to approach it maturely and tactfully and say, "Hey, Susan, you know what? Um, I'm, I love you. Like you do. This place wouldn't be the same without you. I am so glad we're on the same team. But I gotta say, it's making me nuts that you're 20 minutes late every single day because then I have all these phone calls and everything, and it's just I'm feeling really frustrated. But I really want us to get this figured out because life's too short. We're here 40 hours a week. I don't want to be miserable. That tends to go over smoother if it's the kind of the whole sandwich technique where it's, um, something positive, then the criticism, and then ending on something positive. Most people tend that goes down a lot better than just kind of coming at somebody sideways and out of the blue saying, you know what, I just really don't appreciate you coming in 20 minutes late. Most people are gonna be defensive like that, or it can be really triggering for them, and all of a sudden, they're 6 years old again, and their parent is scolding them. And so now they're defaulting back into how that wounded six-year-old handles things. And so if they go into that passive mode, it might be overly people-pleasing, and now they feel like they're walking on eggshells. Or they go into being passive aggressive, doing all kinds of things, or they might get into defense aggressive mode where they're, well, you know what, you're not perfect either. And I saw, you took a long lunch on Friday and, then they start fault finding everything within you. So it's, uh, yeah, there's no such thing as, I think, a simple communication because we all have unresolved stuff. And so I think so rarely are we truly communicating about the issue at hand. It's oftentimes all of the stuff that's unresolved, and it might even be unresolved that has nothing to do with that person. So, just some things to consider. And I need to I'm 12% on my phone. I've gotta go find my phone charger. Hold on a second. I think I actually know where it is for once. Okay. Let's see here. Let me just plug this in. Yeah, and Wonder Woman is talking about a coworker It says I took emails to the big boss to prove what I did was approved initially by the boss who threw me under the bus. My reputation was at stake. Yeah, things like that. Like if you feel like this is more than a communication issue, this is um, kind of someone who's out to get you for whatever reason. I'm a big fan of getting a paper trail like that. So it's documented. Rob says, yeah, that's exactly the scenario a friend of mine just had to deal with. They needed an empathetic, honest communication, and our coworker ended up creating problems with a reference letter. Yeah. Well, Jennifer, you bring up a really great point. She says, uh, I rarely become aggressive. And if I ever do, I feel so stupid afterwards, but I don't know how to be assertive. So I usually default to being passive. Well, you have a tremendous amount of insight in that. And being assertive it's a skill that just takes time and practice. And it does get a little easier over time. But for so many of us, hold on a second. Especially a person who's grown up with verbal abuse or emotional abuse, physical abuse of any kind, really. Being assertive when conflict comes up, if our default is to go into that friend mode or into freeze mode, then it can make it really difficult. And we're like, man, what was I cannot believe I just did that. I just sat there and I smiled and nodded. Like I went into freeze. Or I went into friend mode and completely lied and said that everything was fine and and just tried to smooth things over. So changing the defense mechanism, because this is the challenge with the defense mechanisms, we don't consciously choose what we default to. That fight, flight, freeze, friend mode, that's all determined by our brain based off of how we've learned to handle things in the past. So it can be very difficult to retrain our brain to do something different. And when we do handle things in less than ideal ways, especially if it's becoming aggressive, especially when we are very rarely aggressive, uh, that can feel. I get it because I feel the exact same way. It it's it's almost it can be completely unnerving to become aggressive because I think in part it's the realization of, oh my goodness, now I've rocked the boat. They've rocked the boat before by doing whatever they did. But if our way of handling it was, well, I'm just going to be nice. I'm going to nice my way out of this. Um, or I'm just going to freeze and not do anything. If that's how we've always handled things, then actually being aggressive can be terrifying because now we're rocking the boat back. And if there's unresolved abandonment issues there, um, which a lot of people have, then it can just be this gut wrenching feeling of, oh no, what have I done? And now they're going to leave and I shouldn't have said anything. So there's so much other stuff that's connected and that can just be kicked up, especially with conflict. Um, this is why practicing these skills and when we're not practicing these skills in a safe way with a safe person, so with a friend, with your therapist, whoever, doing some role playing and practicing. What would you say if this were to happen? And going through that, it makes it significantly easier. This is and this is why first responders do what they do, because we all have these different defenses that kick in when we're under stress. So if, I remember uh, when I was in nursing school and we had advanced CPR and then we had PALS. It's like pediatric advanced life support. So there's children involved. And what was so interesting about that is we ran drills over and over and over and over and over again. And the part we were practicing skills, but it was more so practicing how to respond under pressure. And so we would practice with people that would pretend, like with the children, pediatric life support, having people pretend to be parents, panicked parents, screaming in your face, screaming obscenities, touching you, shaking you, um, completely rattling you, threatening to sue you, taking out their phone and filming you. And and all of that pressure of being like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh," and and then we would debrief afterwards. Okay, what went right? What needs work and why? So until you can get it down seamlessly to where you're able to react under pressure in the way that you want, or at least to like a 90, like a level of solid proficiency. So it's the same thing with communication styles. It's that same level of fight or flight that kicks off as anything else. And so practicing in a safe way with a safe person can really, it is worth the time. Uh, let's see here. Also, I'm going to add to that with setting boundaries. Um, if this whole role playing these different scenarios, it's important to also role play what happens if you set a boundary and you say something like, "Oh, that's not okay with me," or, um, "That's just not gonna work for me," or, "I don't think so," or however you say it. If they then push back, then what? Then what are you gonna do? So just like my brother in that example. So this gal asserted herself, "Hey, you know what? I really don't like it when people cuss like that around me." And he he wasn't willing to concede. So she set the boundary. He's like, "Well, I don't care. Like, I'm not really gonna meet you there with that because this is who I am and I'm not gonna change." Then the ball was back in her court. So kind of coming up with some different alternatives to what happens if we assert ourselves and the other person comes back and doesn't doesn't wanna meet us there? Oh, well, thank you, friend. Agatha for the live stream donation. She says, "Hey, girlfriend, it sounds like police should go through that training too. I hope they do. Since I can't have coffee with you, have one on me. Hugs." Yeah. A lot of first responders in general do go through some type of training, firefighters, all of that, because everybody uh, responds to stress in their own way. And it's, really being able to respond in the way that we want to respond. That's an interesting thought. Anita, she says, "Is there a camp that would desensitize people like us? LOL. I'm not sure if it would be helpful or more traumatic." I think it depends. I think that's an interesting thought. Uh, and it depends on how it would be done, would be my guess. I think you could come up with, if it was a safe place, and if you gave survivors that sense of control, where it was, "Hey, you know what? This is what we're gonna be doing here. This is how anticipate feeling these certain emotions, anticipate feeling." The goal here is to get out of our comfort zone, but not, to be re-traumatized. So there's that line. So, like, you have control if you're feeling that this is too much and you need to leave the room, by all means, we can modify the exercise or we can do whatever. I think that kind of desensitization therapy might be really helpful, especially when we're talking about setting boundaries and standards and deal breakers and just assertive communication. Um, and also, I think it would be helpful to teach resiliency and what that looks like. And I think normalizing a lot of these feelings, because most people, this stuff's not taught and it's really not talked about. And so we all kind of tend to go around thinking that everybody else has it all figured out or is better at it than we are. And that's, rarely the case. So, uh, yeah, but that's interesting. Yeah. Truth Seeker was saying that would be amazing. She says, I need a desensitization camp from healthy solutions oriented people like the ones on here. I think it would be great. I think it would be great if, and then also to include people in that feedback process of like, these are the exercises we're going to be doing. Afterwards, we're going to be talking about what worked and what didn't work and why. And then we're going to continue to adjust. So, and that way, just expectations are clear and the approach is clear. Well, that's the downside. I agree with you, Agatha. She says it will be hard to teach people resiliency if we give kids rewards just for participation. Yeah, that's the downside to um, to that, to those things is it's a skill. It's a skill to learn how to fail. And growth involves failure. And if we're not failing, then we're not growing. And uh, if we want to succeed at anything, you're gonna fail a lot more than you will succeed. That's just how that goes. Again, this stuff's not talked about. I was just having this conversation yesterday. No, it was today. It was earlier today. Oh my gosh, uh, with somebody about kind of moving forward with their goals, and they were saying, oh, well, they were afraid of failing, and kind of chalking it up to, oh, well, it's low self esteem, um, and all of this. And it's like, well, you know what though, the reality is you will fail. So I think it's more important to not be caught off guard by that than to try to boost our self-esteem and think that we won't fail. Because anybody that's done anything noteworthy has failed a tremendous amount of times. And because that stuff's not talked about, when we personally go through it and things don't work out, it's very understandable to internalize that and just to think, oh, well, this other person was just, they somehow had it easier or better than me. They had wealthy parents, or they had smarter parents, or they went to college, or they, you know, just got lucky, or it was who they knew. And what we don't see is all of the long hours that they're putting in, failing over and over and over again. So, yeah, I think we just, as a society, we just really need to develop a different relationship with failure and see it as part of the success process instead of something to avoid. But here's the other thing with failure is schools in general, this is, kind of this open mindset to failure is squeezed out of kids by second grade. That it's very much all about failure is a bad thing, right? Like you've got to be I could go on and on about this, but like in elementary, well, even up until college, it's there's the focus on you've got to be good at everything. You need to get A's and B's in math, science, history, your foreign language, PE, all of these things. And most people aren't Renaissance people. They're not good at everything. And that's the challenge uh, with school. So there's this pressure of failure is bad. And so then when a person gets into college, especially if they go for a bachelor's degree, the last 2 years of your bachelor's is focused on what you actually want to learn for the first time in your life. Like it's specific classes to your interest, not just general ed. That's when school starts getting easy because it's enjoyable. And then a lot of that failure isn't so much a thing because you're not having to push yourself. Like those interests are pulling at you because it's enjoyable. And um but yeah, just cultivating a different a different attitude towards failure. It's sad. It's sad to me how many people just stop trying because they're completely afraid to fail. Right. Bonnie was saying, yeah, we can fail temporarily, but we can learn from it. Yep. It's that really, it is just what it is. It's examining what didn't work. Teaching resiliency. Yeah. Vitamin C says, yeah, failing forward. Yep. Absolutely. Zachary says, I think a lot of everyone has fears of failing. There are a lot of projects I would like to start, but I put off because of what will people think. Yep. And here's the cool thing about this is we live in a day and age where it's so interesting to see the behind the scenes of things because this stuff's not talked about. So it almost is this kind of voyeuristic uh glimpse into the forbidden, right? Or into the taboo. And it's so fascinating to see when people, think about YouTube, people that have channels that document like their weight loss journey, or they're going to try to start a business, or they're going to try to do something, and then they document the journey. That stuff is so fascinating. And to hear all about their wins and their losses and what they think about them or how they're feeling at the time and where they wind up in a year, and it's just it's so interesting. So I think that anybody who's wanting to do anything, sometimes I think it can be easier almost to create a YouTube channel and just document the journey of whatever you're wanting to do, even if you don't know what you want to do, like documenting the journey into adulting. you know, like, well, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm thinking I'm gonna go down this path, and then just recording it, and it's relatable. People get, uh, a lot of people feel that way, and it's just interesting to see somebody go down that path. Uh, and plus, if you have that level of detachment of, I'm just going to document all of this, then the highs and lows don't feel so, especially the lows, they don't feel so painful because you kind of realize, well, this is all part of my story, and this is gonna make for something really interesting. And I kind of can't wait to share this low with other people because we're going to get a good laugh out of it, or this is going to be, I wonder what other people think about this, or whatever. So I don't know, just random random thoughts. Okay, let's see here. Yeah. Uh, yeah, Agatha was saying most successful people actually set up to fail as quickly as possible so they can go on to get to succeeding. Yep. I think the key is when we're doing that, when we know, okay, we're going to ride this learning curve, there's going to be quite a bit of failure. There's going to be more failure than success because that's just how that goes. So we're not going to go all in with the first thing. We're going to just go slow, and we're going to be open to continually adjusting and adapting, and um, learning the lessons along the way. I think a lot of the mistakes a lot of people make is they don't anticipate failing or making any mistakes whatsoever, and then they go all in on the first thing, like, okay, that's it, I'm going to start a YouTube channel about, I don't know, whatever, like fashion, and then they go out and they spend $3,000 on YouTube equipment, and they form an LLC, and they have all of these big time expenses, and then they they get a few videos into it, and they realize that that's not for them, and then they're out all that money, and then they're intimidated to try because now they've associated failure with being expensive, and it doesn't need to be. Just start simple, just start, and you'll refine along the way. Okay, let's see. Uh, Let's see. Sebastian Sam is talking to Sebastian. He says, "Don't believe anything his ex, is saying, especially the love part. The fearing um, you'll show on her place is a projection. Oh, you'll show up at her place, I think is what he means, is a projection of what she would want to do to you to further humiliate you. Don't take the bait." Yeah. I just Sebastian, I just would get real clear with you, uh, with why this relationship wasn't working. And if you do decide, to try to give it another give her another chance, or, respond to her or whatever, I would just get real clear on yourself. Where is your line in the sand? Because it's so helpful. It's so important that we know, okay, at what point are you going to cut bait? How much pain do you need to experience before you realize this is not for you? So getting clear on that can really help, because sometimes we do. Sometimes we need to go around that mountain a few times and realize and experience pain and realize, okay, yeah, I thought it would work. I thought if I just kind of handled things in a certain way, and if I just had this a different approach, that things would work out. And then when they don't, or when it's worse, we get the clarity we need. Sometimes it's the hard way, and that's okay, but just getting clear with yourself, so you'll know when you've reached that line in the sand. Jennifer says, "There are a lot of amazing millennials out there that are trying to make things better and have some pretty amazing ideas, and I find a lot of them have a sense of fearlessness when it comes to doing." I would agree with that. However, I think a lot of them, really just become debilitated when they truly experience failure, because they haven't experienced failure. They haven't experienced it with sports. If everybody's getting a trophy, if, school is significantly easier now than it was 20 years ago, uh, everything has really been watered down to where, getting A's and getting trophies is, you just got to show up and kind of do the bare minimum. It's not, that's not the real world. And so when they do get out there and they do start businesses, and I love that, like, kind of unbridled enthusiasm and that desire to want to make a positive change. Like, that's living a life of purpose on purpose. That's what it's really all about. But if a person's never truly failed and never had to deal with the ramifications of that, with that embarrassment, the shame, the possible guilt, the pressure, if you start a business and you've got other people, you've taken on loans, you've maybe have family and friends that have invested, handling that, um, telling people that you've failed, it's it can be really, really humbling, and it can push a lot of people to suicide. So it's cultivating resiliency. It's important. And again, it's not taught to the level that it really needs to be. I think if anything, it would be a really good class to have in college with, um, basically how to handle failure and how to build resiliency, and just to experience that. Let's see here. Sebastian, another question I would encourage you to ask yourself, and this goes for everybody out there, but when you're dating a person, the whole purpose of dating is, it's a process of discernment. So that's somehow gotten lost along the way. Nowadays it's sort of like, oh, this person's, I'm attracted to them. Um, and that's it. Like there's no real level of discernment other than I'm attracted to them, or they're funny, or uh, maybe there's one or two qualities that we like about them. We have I don't know, some sort of common interest. I like to go dancing, they like to go dancing. I like to read science fiction, they like to read science fiction. Well, our relationship takes more than that. And so asking yourself, is this the kind of woman, uh, is this the kind of woman that is gonna make that's gonna not only make good wife material, but that is gonna be somebody that you can basically run a three-legged race with, because that's what marriage is. So if you're going down that road, or if you're looking for like a long-term relationship, is this somebody that you can run a three-legged race with? Because there's a lot of communication that's gonna be involved there, a lot of negotiation, a lot of problem solving. Is there that ability with this person? And and then asking yourself, if is this the kind of woman that I would want to have children with? If you had 6 daughters that were exactly like her, with her, what would your life look like? Just getting real honest, because it's not sexy and it's not romantic, and I know it doesn't, um, we want to hold on to hope that things could potentially be other than they are, but getting really real. If things were to be exactly how they are today, or how they were last time things ended, what would your future look like, and what advice would your future self give you about this situation? Yeah, Rob says, yeah, that's really it, Dana. It's a three-legged race for the long end. That's a game of one partner. At a minimum, he says that's a good idea, Dana. I do not want 6 psychopaths for children. And if you do, that's good, because that's a handful. I would just encourage you, or anybody else that's dating, if you're in that process of discernment, this is the time to be discerning. This is the time to be picky and to focus on choosing a solid partner, not focusing on, boy, I hope we can make this work. I hope that they choose me. I hope that we get back together because I'm attracted to this person. That's all smoke and mirrors, and that stuff does not last. So that the core fundamental stuff is what a happy, healthy life is built on. And I think a lot of people in here can attest to it. Who you marry makes really impacts your happiness and your health and a lot of other things. It's not a decision to take lightly. So if you're dating women, or if you're dating guys, or whatever the dynamic is, whoever you're dating, getting clear with yourself, what is the purpose of dating for you? And it is what it is. I mean, if it's casual dating, then it's casual dating, but just be clear. Uh, if you're dating looking for a long-term life partner, then make sure that that person's long-term life partner material. So, um, yeah. Yep. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, I just lost the chat. What did I do? Good. Ay, ay, ay. I tell ya. Okay, hold on. I'm still trying to figure out what button I just clicked. That's that's cute. Let me just close out and try to reopen it here. Okay, there we go. Oh, I was gonna tell you one more thing, Sebastian. And I know this is again, it's not sexy, it's not romantic, uh but it's the reality. Anybody that's If you're dating a person that you're like, you know what, we're really on again, off again, these things are really, it's problematic. There's a lot of concerning behavior in here. Use birth control. Use birth control, because I can't tell. There's so many people. You guys have been in here It happened to me. Things happen where a person unintentionally gets pregnant, and that can really just take your life on a very different course. So uh, it's just eyes wide open about this kind of stuff. Oh, I like that. That is good advice. Helpful Mom says, yeah, regarding dating, the best advice I received was first figure out what you want in a partner and then make yourself that person. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's it's great when we're able to kind of fill that own bucket in our life of what we're wanting in another person. And then if they do show up, and we do meet them, then we're interacting with them from a place of just pure appreciation and enjoyment. And uh, it's not this desperate need of like, oh my goodness, I can't mess anything up. This is the perfect person, and I've got to walk on eggshells, and I got to really go to these great lengths to try to fool them, to try to fool them into thinking that I have these certain things in common with them. If we actually get that stuff figured out, then it's more of that natural chemistry and relatability, and that's when it works. Let's see here. Kamami, that's interesting. Oh, hold on a second, guys. Okay. Kamami was saying, I'm afraid that some people will never heal because they just don't want to. There is truth in that, and but potentially not for the reasons that might be so obvious, I think. I was also having this conversation earlier today with Agatha, and uh, here's my 2 cents on that is the healing process is not something that's widely or accurately understood by a lot of people. And I think a person really has to go through it and come out on the other end of it to even begin to understand it. But even then, it's limited because they're limited to their experience with it. So there's a lot to healing other than just not feeling suicidal or not feeling emotionally devastated anymore. Um, so there's that. But then I think a lot of people, myself included, when you're so victimized, it's it can be so difficult to figure out how, like, what do you do? Like, how do you move forward with that? Especially when all of the advice or input that you're getting from other people about how to move forward just more re-victimizing. Oh, forgive and forget. Oh, nobody's perfect. Oh, it wasn't that bad. Oh, it was a bad breakup. Oh, you just got to get out back out there and date again. So if you're getting all of this bad advice, like there's so many challenges with truly healing. And I really feel like if a lot of people, excuse me, hold on. If the healing process was more laid out for people, then they can kind of realize, oh, I didn't realize that there was a step after this. So that's the unfortunate thing is because like we were talking about failure before, really nobody in any walk of life, you're not going to learn all of the lessons that you need to learn to do things perfectly the next time. It's an evolution. Like when I don't know, when you learn to play the piano, you're that you start off at first and it's all wrong. then then you start getting a little better, but there's still a few notes that you miss or keys that you miss or whatever. And when you learn how to start walking, there's a lot of trial and error. You stumble, you fall, you kind of just misjudge steps, all of this when you um, It's just everything with kind of any new skill acquisition. That's just the process, and healing is no different. So there's this idea out there that if we've been through this once, that it will never happen again, and that's not true, because odds are we're only going to learn a handful of the lessons, and odds are even though those handful of lessons we learn, odds are a lot of them are going to be inaccurate, because our brain is going to by default just start linking up what it thinks caused us pain, but it's oftentimes, like we've talked about a million times, it's oftentimes not accurate. It's like, oh, well, men must be the problem, or Geminis must be the problem, or, I'm never going to date an attorney again, or somebody that has a muscle car, or whatever. And that's not the issue. Or I'm never going to date somebody that doesn't have, has crazy people in their past. Kind of this black or white thinking, when that's not it. It's problematic behavior that's the problem. It's not any one of those things. So I'm pretty sure it's in my third book, the Narcissist's Playbook. I At the end, I map out what I feel is a pretty good, at least a starting point, as far as what to expect, as far as like what the map, I would say, fairly accurately looks like. Everybody's journey is going to be a little different, but like here are the common pitfalls, and here are places that people tend to get hung up on, and why. So just kind of having the knowledge of the territory helps, because, like I just look at myself. I When I was going through this, when I was focused on healing, I did I did what most people do, and just focused on kind of rebuilding my life, and then realized, oh my gosh, then boom, landed up in another just as crazy, or not just as crazy, but still crazy relationship. And then I thought, okay, now this is a pattern. What lessons did I not, what did I miss? What am I missing here? And I had to keep getting curious. And there were still a few more people that I ran into online and whatnot that were really toxic. And then that's what just kind of helped me to figure out, to fill in those gaps of what I was missing. But it's really difficult when we're having to learn the hard way like this. It's really easy and understandable for a person to get hurt enough to where they stop trying. And that's tragic. And it really doesn't have to be that way. So let's see here. This is chat. There's all kinds of comments in here. It's funny. Uh, Sarah, that is a great question. She says, where do I start in the healing journey? I would say probably step one is going to be getting yourself out of that fight or flight mode and into that rest and digest mode. So cultivating that sense of safety and stability in your life I think it's an often overlooked first step. And I'm not even sure if it's so overlooked. I'm not even sure I put it in my book. I should have, because it's so important, because we're just not going to be thinking clearly if we're in fight or flight. So doing what you can to to bring yourself back to that baseline of a sense of peace and calm as much as possible. Tripling up your self-care, ideally getting, kind of shoring up your social support. If you're kind of running low on support due to this relationship, meetup.com is absolutely fantastic. It's not a dating site, and a lot of the activities are low cost or free. So that's something to consider, or joining some groups on Facebook that are in your area. sometimes they'll have, moms groups on Facebook or dads groups on Facebook or, what have you. So that can be a good way to get out there and just start meeting new people. Um, so I would start there and really starting to build up a life that is supportive and a life that you love and and not dating. Just kind of just bench yourself for for I would say really I would say at least 6 months, at least, ideally more, but at least six. There's some fundamental understandings that need to happen in order for any relationship that you get into to truly work. Um, I would say the next thing to start bringing into your awareness is just you're being honest with yourself of when you are uncomfortable and when you're comfortable. That sounds so obvious. Uh, or it's like something like that we would just know. And I guarantee you that most people don't, because we're socialized to gloss over a lot of things. We're socialized, men and women both are socialized to kind of be polite or to not have certain feelings. And so we're so out of tune with our emotions. It's wild. So really being honest with yourself of and not justifying it, not being like, well, I'm just not comfortable around this coworker or, whoever. Well, but I should be. I should be. I'm being judgmental. I'm being rude. It's um, you know, kind of chalking up concerning behavior or problematic behavior due to whatever reason. Just acknowledging to yourself, I'm just not that comfortable around this person. And then kind of exploring why. Because one of the things that I hear time and time again from people is they'll say, and I did this too at first. They'll say, "Oh, well, uh, I my intuition was telling me that something was off." But the reality is they're not being honest with themselves that there's something that's actually a problem and they're minimizing it. And sometimes they don't even have the vocabulary for it. And so when you have the vocabulary for it and you're just more equipped to identify something for what it is when we have the words to describe it. So what I found, myself included, is once people have that certain level of knowledge about what problematic behavior is, a lot of this is just getting that validation of, yes, indeed, silent treatment, that's a problem. A person like withholding important information or being passive aggressive or throwing you under the bus or kind of creating this icy presence or all of the different ways that ineffective communication can come across. Yeah, like this feels hurtful or abusive because oftentimes it's hurtful and abusive. It's just we're not used to understanding certain types of behavior in that way. So, um, the point of that is what I've found is that with time and knowledge, then people are more able to accurately pinpoint what the problem is with the situation. And when they're able to do that, it's not so nebulous. It's no longer, well, I just kind of had a funny feeling, or, oh, I just had a gut feeling about this person. They're able to say, well, actually, no, what it was this person, um, told me things didn't add up. This person told me that painted this picture that they were highly successful, but yet they showed up, uh, in clothes, things didn't add up. They showed up in clothes that didn't fit and that, it just seemed like they were trying to impress me. And, um, I, uh, little things like they stopped and got gas, but they only got half a tank, things like that, where, and this is from personal experience with this anyways, but where on the surface, you're like, oh man, I feel so judgmental. And I don't want to be rude. I don't want to judge. I don't want to this. I don't want to that. But if things don't add up, things don't add up. And it's not about being rude or judgmental or any of that. It's just being observant. So, uh, you know, the more, I think, validation, the more understanding that you can have about when something feels off, and realizing that if something feels off, and if it's uncomfortable, then that's all the validation that you need to adjust your approach. Like, we don't need to sit there and continue to be around another person and wait for their behavior to become very, very obviously problematic before we do something different. Like, if it's unsettling to you, that's enough of a reason to do something different. Like, if, for example, like if somebody's walking behind you in a parking lot, we eh, I think especially women, we tend to feel like, "Oh, I don't wanna be rude. I don't wanna I don't wanna freak them out. I don't wanna make them feel like they're a criminal or something. If, what if this person, I don't even know if it's male or female because 'cause they're behind me. I don't wanna weird them out because I feel hypervigilant, but them walking fast behind me is freaking me out, and, um, but we don't know what their intentions are, but we don't need to know. We just need to know that we're not okay with what's happening, and so be it. If we cross the parking lot, if we slow down and turn around, if we take out our phone, if we take out our mace, then so be it. Who cares, you know? But waiting until it actually until we actually know that it's a problem, that they actually do have bad intentions, means we've waited too long. So, I'm sorry, feel like I'm rambling. I've been up for a very long time today, so bear with me. So I guess let me recap. First thing to focus on, self-care, getting yourself back into rest and digest mode. Second point is to start being honest with yourself about what's making you uncomfortable, and realizing that that's all you need. We don't need to know somebody's intentions. We don't need to know that. We just need to know it's something's either working for you or it's not working for you. And if it's not working for you, if it's making you uncomfortable, then it's time for you to adjust your approach or the way that you're interacting with that person. That right there, that you don't need concrete proof. You don't need to wait until they prove you right that they really are indeed abusive, or that they really are indeed a jerk. Uh, that you can, if somebody's just it's unsettling to you, that's a game changer. So, yeah. Oh, let me I keep forgetting the chat is on my phone, not on my computer. And Sarah asked again in the chat, I have no idea where to start healing. Any suggestions, anyone? I really feel well, like I mentioned before, I feel like my I've written 3 books. The Start Here book is all of, like, the terms and concepts. It's important to just read that. I think that that'll bring some things into clarity for you. The second book, Out of the Fog, will hopefully bring more clarity. It compares and contrasts, um, kind of like functional and dysfunctional concepts, like the difference between love bombing and love, the difference between commitment and codependency, the difference between a parent and a predator, the difference between a friend versus somebody who's being friendly. So untangling that part of it all. The third book, I would say, in particular, I forget which part it is, the final part of the book, part 4, maybe part 5, I'm not sure. That final part of it really goes into a deeper dive with kind of personality traits that are frequently exploited, and, um, the kind of the roadmap to healing. So I'd mentioned earlier, if you are, um, funds are tight or what have you, uh, audio, you can contact your local library and ask them to order, really any books, and they generally will. So, including audiobooks, most libraries have Hoopla, which is a free service for audiobooks. So that's an option too. So lots of options out there as far as this stuff goes. And really, I think, too, chatting with other survivors, and you're just going to get a wide range of feedback. And that's really where I feel like the magic happens is it's not, um, it's not just relying on me or another speaker on this topic. It's 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 truly learning to turn inward and to find your own North Star. And when deep. Here's the thing with healing. Healing is not about becoming different. It's about becoming more of what you are. So a lot of healing thankfully, it has to do with unlearning. It's not so much about learning a bunch of new skills. It's about unlearning a bunch of things. So maybe that kind of takes some of the pressure off, some of the weight of healing off. It truly is. It's about unlearning so many things. And it's so cool when people start to really find themselves again, they get their sea legs. And they're like, oh my gosh, I do know. I do know. That's the thing is you have all of the answers in you right now. So yay for that. It's just going to be the process of getting, shoveling out and getting rid of all of this rubble of well-intended bad advice that that we all get buried with. So, oh, well, thank you. The Nocturnal Phoenix, that's a great name. Says, "Hey Dana, I just wanted to verbalize how appreciative I am of your work, even when I'm sleep deprived. Much love from a disabled vet working on my MSW and 5 years in CODA." Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. And congratulations working on your MSW. That is super exciting. And 5 years in CODA. You're just a powerhouse. Onward and upward. I love it. Okay, let's see. This chat is all over the place. I swear. People are talking about enchiladas and then some paganism. I don't know. You couldn't throw darts at a dartboard and at conversation topics and come up with such wildly different conversation topics. I love it. Bonnie asks, okay, Dana, can the audiobooks get sent straight to your computer like Audible? That's a good question. For Hoopla, I don't I don't know. I don't know. I've never tried to do that. There is an app that you can put on your phone for Hoopla. I know that. Um, that would be a good question to ask the library. Or I can play around with I'm gonna add that to my list. I'll play because odds are you are not gonna be the last person that's gonna have that question. So let's see here. Hoopla. Hoopla on desktop. We shall see here. Uh, yeah, Zachary says, yay for MSWs. That's awesome. Yes, it really is awesome. I need to put a shout out to all my I don't know, to people that are interested in doing this kind of work for a living. MSWs, LPCs, uh, psychology, psychiatry, even life coaching that really want to work with survivors so we can form a network of awesomeness. Would be great. Okay. Let's see. Scrolling. Huffle Mom. Oh, it's interesting. She says, out of curiosity, how would you handle someone who insists on treating you like a victim? I just can't handle that. I go from 0 to furious in 2 seconds. Um, I guess here's the way I would look at it is other people, everybody's boundaries are different. And so that person's approach might be how they would want to be interacted with, or that might be how they interacted with other people and what worked before. So they might not realize that they're crossing a boundary with you. If this is a person that you have an ongoing relationship with, I would encourage you to just kind of let them know. So uh, I don't if they're doing something specific, you could say, and again, I guess I just would try to approach it with grace and compassion, because obviously if they're going to great lengths to kind of acknowledge that you were victimized, um, I would just approach it of, you know what, I know you're coming from a good place, and uh, but at this point in my healing, I really feel like I'm um, a survivor or I'm a thriver, and what happened to me was incredibly painful, but it's it's no longer like, defining my life, or however you want to kind of phrase it, because every single survivor is going to be so different when it comes to how they're comfortable being interacted with, and it's going to change throughout your healing of how you perceive these things. So, but yeah, just being assertive and is always a good approach. Let's see here. Let me scroll down. Oh, goodness gracious. Hold on. Come here. Come here. Come here. Roman, I love you. Come here. Now you're just gonna sit there and cry. I know you. I know you. Come here. Yes, I know. I know. Let's here. Gonna read some questions. We're gonna read some questions. Yeah. Okay. Me. Oh, well, thank you. Huffle Mom says, would you be okay if I just said how awesome I think you are? Just wondering. That 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 means a lot. I really appreciate that. And it's so cool that I have it in writing. So just kidding. That really that makes me smile. I really appreciate that. Uh let's see. Oh, Mora. Very cool. Says, hey, I'm in my MSW program as well. Very cool. Somebody asked, hey, what is CODA? It is a 12-step program for codependency. And, it's it's hit or miss. It's not for everybody. And even every 12-step group is different. So just kind of know that as well. So one might, just like any AA, just like any group, one group might not resonate with you, but another one might. So yes. 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 Let's see. Scrolling. Let's see. I think I'm missing part of this comment here. Free Indeed said, should I just not even try to go furniture shopping or household shopping? That's where I just begin to completely freak out, and I've even started to cry. I've heard it's best to just deal with it. I guess that it depends on what's causing the tears. Is it the decision making? Is it the decision making of all of it, or is it the um, just kind of the reality of um, the next chapter in your life, or kind of what's going on? So it's going to depend. I think getting clear with you about where the emotion is coming from is going to be, that's kind of the beautiful thing. The gift of triggers like that is, it shows us which parts need to be healed. And it doesn't mean that you have to heal that part right away, but just realizing, okay, there's some pain there that needs to be addressed. Mothering Hand says, who is that in your lap? This is so cute. This is Roman. This is quite possibly the love of my life. I am so in love with this dog. I am so in love with you. And he knows it. And he knows it. It's true. Yes. He is just so stinking cute. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you. Oh, there you go. Okay. What? I don't know. Why do you cry? Why do you cry? Oh, I'm right here. People are talking about 12 steps and stuff. I actually, interestingly enough, I just came across, well, I didn't come across it. Somebody showed it to me. It's a AA, it's a Bible. It's called, I want to say it's called the Recovery Bible. And it I am not Christian, but I absolutely loved that this is the thing, because it's a lot of scripture, and it's addressed. There's a lot of footnotes, and it talks about kind of scripture and how it relates to the 12 steps, and how it relates to them in a very empowering way. Because a lot of people, the kind of beef they have with AA especially, or even NA, or has to do with kind of some antiquated concepts about they seemingly antiquated concepts about kind of guilt and shame, and this is like a kind of like a moral failing, and that we need to address these parts of ourselves, and all of this, or that we need to find a higher power, or what have you. But for those that are kind of have Bible-based beliefs, that Recovery Bible is really neat. So highly recommend it. I can't believe it took me this long to actually come across it. So yeah, Zachary is right. He says, oh yeah, lots of prospective social workers in the chat lately. Yeah, it is interesting. It makes my heart smile seeing that. I think it's such an exciting time to be in the mental health field. There's so much that's coming out, having to do with trauma, and having to do with we're at that next wave of emotional health awareness, and that's going to be really exciting to see where that goes. I just hope I live a really long time, because I really want to see some major changes happen in my lifetime. Okay, Roman, up, down, down, up, down. Oh, it's the up, down game. Okay. Let's see here. Andy says, I think everyone I know is a narcissist, and it's scrambling my brain. Well, that feeling is very common, and I'll tell you what it tends to be is when our eyes are first open to that not everybody in the world has the same morals and motivations as us, and that there are hurtful people out there, and that we can't readily identify them, that they don't all look like Charles Manson, or I don't know, trying to think of a scary woman, that people, they don't look scary, because we all walk around thinking that we'd be able to spot a dangerous person, and the vast majority of the time we can't. And that's terrifying when we realize that. And so when especially if a person has caused a tremendous amount of damage in our life, and we're we're sitting among the rubble and we're trying to figure out what on earth happened, and more so, how do I prevent this from happening again? And we're going about trying to pick up the pieces from all of this. And so when we start learning about, oh, okay, this is, you know, a personality disorder is a thing, and that there are people out there that they're not team oriented, and that they have such malicious and destructive and deceitful behavior, and they lack empathy and they lack remorse and they just consume and destroy. It's difficult for a normal, decent person to fully understand that. It's difficult even for people in the mental health field who learn about this to even understand it. It's, it's one of those things that a person unfortunately almost has to go through to fully understand the level of damage that can be done. So, but anyways, when we start to wake up to this and we're like, oh my goodness, okay, I can't readily spot a dangerous person. And especially if we're looking at behavior in a very black or white way, like, oh, well, if a person, I don't know, takes a lot of selfies, and that means they're a narcissist. Or if they drive a brand new car, like a BMW, that means that they're a narcissist. Or if they are, they talk, I don't know, they talk too much about themselves at dinner, then that means they're a narcissist. When we're on high alert like that, it's a stage in healing. I really feel it's a stage in healing. And I feel like it's a stage when we're trying to redraw our map of the world in order to stay safe. And so that's where that hypervigilance comes from, because our brain is saying, hey, how you thought to keep yourself safe, you were wrong, really, really wrong before. So we need to figure some things out so we can, so we can, so your brain can keep you safe in the future. And it's going to start, because our brains are meaning-making machines, and they're pattern recognition machines. And so it's going to start linking up all kinds of things. And so it's very common when we're trying to solve a problem or figuring out what causes us pain, for our brain to see this kind of stuff everywhere in order to try to keep us safe. That tends to settle down in time, especially the more we start learning about what problematic behavior is. So the more information, the more knowledge, the more accurate I should say, knowledge and information you have, the more you'll start seeing behavior, I think, in a broader context, where it's not so much about whether or not, it's not so black or white. It's not so, is this person a narcissist or are they quote unquote normal? We start realizing that normal, there's a third category there. So there's, highly problematic people, narcissists being one type of them. Then there's quote unquote normal people, which really just tends to be various shades of dysfunction. And then there's healthy. And healthy tends to be, it's very individualized. It's what is nourishing for you. And, there might still be some sort of dysfunctional behavior there, but it's not going to completely derail you. So it's aiming for healthy, and then realizing, dysfunctional behavior, it's out there and it's on a spectrum, and it's shocking how many people are profoundly dysfunctional that are walking around on the streets. And it's terrifying. It's just terrifying when you realize that not everybody that the world is not a safe place. It's not. And then anybody who says that it is, I don't even know, ignorant, naive, silly, I don't know, sheltered, I don't know. The world is an unpredictable place. And that's important that we understand that. So a lot of the lessons that come from well-intended bad advice, and a lot of the lessons we've learned early on don't fit with a more mature understanding of the world. A lot of those lessons of, love like you've never been hurt before, immediately trust people and then until you're proven wrong. Um, all people really want is love. These kinds of things, these are greeting card sayings. It's not real life. And if we live our life based on that, it's a crapshoot as to where we wind up. So, we don't want your life to be a gamble like that. We want to go about things in a more kind of mature way. And so understanding behavior it's a spectrum. And once you're aware, like we talked about earlier, about what is comfortable and not comfortable for you and knowing how to respond to it when that happens, that's really the core of making your life work. That's probably the essence of self-awareness, really. That'll impact the kind of people you date, that'll impact the career field you go into, the relationship you have with your parents, your siblings, your next door neighbor, um, across the board. It will impact everything you do, the hobbies you have, the friends you have, all of it is knowing what's nourishing for you, what's draining for you, and realizing that you don't need to put up with stuff that's incredibly draining. Like, you don't need to wait until you have no energy left and you can't get out of bed, or until you get to the point where you absolutely hate your neighbor in order to do something about it. If it's uncomfortable for you, that's a sign to take some sort of corrective action. So I don't know, that was I don't know if I'm making sense anymore. I'm really tired. Uh, you guys are good sports. Thank you for humoring me. Uh, yes, that's a very good point, David. He says it seems that the healthier you get, the more you find healthy people around you to embrace. So I guess it really is about focusing on yourself first. Yes, absolutely. Because here's why. Because society is dysfunctional. Assuming that, a person grows up in this kind of leave it to beaver type home, right? And they have this great childhood and it's just absolutely wonderful. And that's very, very rare. Person that's in a dysfunctional society is going to pick up a lot of dysfunctional behavior. So there's no escaping. Like, we all have imbalances there that need to be ironed out. And when there's these imbalances present, it's the whole kind of wherever you go, there you are kind of a thing. Those imbalances are going to be there too. So, like Jennifer was saying earlier, she really struggles with being assertive. She tends to default into being passive, and every now and again she goes to being aggressive. That's really common for a lot of people. And that's an imbalance. So if assertive behavior is what is going to actually work, because either one of those, being aggressive or being passive, it's especially the passive part is going to be her continually not getting her needs met and learning how to tolerate frustration. And that's a really hard way to live. So if until that imbalance is corrected to a point where her life starts to level out, and and I hate to put you on the spot here, Jennifer, I'm sorry. Um, that was not intended. I'm sorry. uh, but until that imbalance is out, then everything is going to be a little skewed. So I'll use myself as an example. So I'm not picking on Jennifer here, but I was very much the same way. So if that imbalance, it took me a long time to see that imbalance, because it's sort of like the last thing the fish notices is the water. When this is how you've always been, it's very difficult to realize that there's a change that needs to be made, because you just think, well, this is just how it is. And so it's really easy for people to think, oh, everybody else is the problem. And other people may very well be the problem. But until we can get some of these fundamental skills down, with learning how to be assertive, with boundary standards, deal breakers, getting things in balance, learning how to handle problematic people and problematic situations, then we're always going to be kind of behind the ball. So things are always going to be a challenge, because if we don't know how to handle problematic people or situations, then the result of that is going to be that we have to rely on other people to not be problematic. And that's never going to happen, because um, everybody's boundaries are unique to them, and they're ever changing, depending on where you are in your life, depending on what kind of mood you're in, depending on the person, the situation, you name it. So if we're putting all of the burden on this other person to just treat us right all of the time, we're asking the impossible. So this is why it's so important that we learn these, and there's a handful of like really fundamental skills that we learn this, because when we bring those skills to the table, we're equipped to handle things, and we're equipped with the skills needed to build a healthy relationship, instead of showing up and then hoping that this other person is everything that we want and need, and that somehow this healthy relationship will just kind of materialize, because that's not how that works. So yeah, focusing on yourself, it's where it's at. Okay. Vitamin C says, well, since the world is filled with psychopaths, narcissists, and other types of toxic people, it makes sense to learn as much as possible about them and how they operate. I agree. I think it's a good starting point, because, again, normal, decent people, this stuff's not even on their radar. It's just not. If you're not an exploitative, uh, you know, the last thing the fish notices is the water, kind of thing. It's just not even on a person's radar that a person would lie about certain things, or could possibly just be so delusional, or that other, that a person could just be so vastly different, I guess. 'Cause we all kind of walk around thinking, well, everybody wants the same thing, right? Like we all want to just kind of be loved and give love and live happily ever after. And no, not everybody's like that at all. Some people, that would just be, that's they loathe the idea of that. So, yep. Bonnie, well said. She says, yep, don't depend on crazy narcissists to have judgment and good and healthy boundaries. They can't. We need to depend on us, not them. Yeah. And I think you could even expand that and just say, let's just not depend on other people um, to have good and healthy boundaries, or even to know where our boundaries are, because they're not going to. Some things are fall within the range of kind of normal expected adult behavior, right? Like we expect other people to know, hey, you're crossing a boundary if we're dating and you're flirting with somebody, or this is crossing a boundary that you borrow money and you don't pay it back, or this is crossing a boundary that, you're showing up late for work every single time, or whatever it might be. But um, the, the more intricate parts of that, of certain conversations, hey, I really don't like it when this is just off limits for me. I can't have certain conversations about, I don't want to have certain conversations about X, Y, and Z. Like, I don't know, religion or politics, or um, I don't know why you don't like the Joker movie, or what, I don't want to listen to country music, or whatever it might be. It's like, this just doesn't work for me. And then realizing, like we were talking about earlier, then what? If another person just, it's like, well, that's too bad. I really, then the next part is, okay, then I need to do something different. I need to get some distance. Like if they're not willing to, you know, to kind of meet us halfway, or whatever it is, we, you know, Just kind of knowing what do you need to do? What do you need to do in order to have peace in your life is the bottom line. Jennifer says, I still need to see the Joker. Yeah, me too. That's on my list of things to do. So I am going to sign off. I am so very tired. So just real quick, Angie and I are doing our live stream tomorrow at 1 p.m. I think it's on her channel this week. So we missed it yesterday because she had a sick child. So 1 p.m. we're changing up the time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll go for about an hour, maybe a little over. Yeah. So we'll see you guys. Angie Atkinson is her channel. And these live streams, if you are new here, these are something that I try to do every Wednesday night. They normally go for about 3 hours. We normally do a meditation thing at the end, but I am so tired. I think I'm going to call it a night, but I hope to see you guys next week. And just as always, lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and just send in lots of light and love your way. Okay. Good night.